Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new video podcast, The Wounded Healer to Hero's Journey. And in this new first video series, we have the lovely Caroline Tobin, who's going to be my co-host for this session. And Caroline is a spiritual teacher, coach, healer. Caroline, I'll hand it over to you for you just to share a little bit about you, and then I'll share a little bit about me.
Okay, so thank you, Eileen, for inviting me here. And what I'm really looking forward to is the co-hosting to getting to know each other on a deeper level, but also, like we've discussed previously, we have very different perspectives on how we look on things. We've had different journeys, but it's really important to be able to open up that space for another person, because we will just make those perceptions from our experiences. And everybody in these times must be allowed to resonate with the experience that they resonate with. There is no absolute truths apart from that in natural law. And we are in danger of massive polarization in this world, and everybody going into the shadow where they are actually thinking that they're right or wanting to be right, and they can't actually hear another person. So this is why I think it's so important that we come together now in friendship, and we have our different perspectives, and we may agree, we may not agree, the audience may agree, they may not agree, but it's that opening of space. Because I know for a fact, well, I believed in 5 years ago, I don't believe that much anymore. So it's knowing that all of it is a journey, and that we must just open up to that information, and we can only hear what we are ready to hear in that moment. And I've done it where I've looked at books and understood it at that level. And then I've gone back 5 years later. And because our whole journey is like a spiral, I am able to pick it up at a much deeper level. So this is where it's so important, all these layers that connect between ourselves, and not identifying as you as the person, but just that we have all part of that collective knowledge that comes through us if we open up to that flow. So, Eileen, how would you feel about what I just said? Would you have anything to add about that?
Caroline, I totally agree. I think that we all come in as individuals. And just like you said, you come in and you come into this journey with a certain perception. And our journey we go through all sorts of different learning, and we come into this world with maybe even unique gifts, unique patterns, as part of what we're going to be talking about with archetypes. And we come in with maybe a certain level of consciousness, and that changes, and with our experiences and with how we perceive the world, everything changes. And how we see something, even part of even as the healer's journey, is what we're going to be talking about. Is that I know I started, for example, my healing journey over 30 years ago. When I started, the first modality was like Reiki, and I'd also at that time explored things like self-development and things like that. And my view of that then is very, very different, and about healing and looking, and even how I was taught, what I was taught, it's very different in my views now, and level of understanding. But also I would challenge some beliefs because of just my experiences, but they are just my experiences. And I think that, part of this exploring the wounded healer's journey is recognizing that everybody has their own unique journey and unique learning. And, that takes me back to Caroline, your own journey, and what made you, you, and your wounded healer's journey. Where did that begin? And how did that evolve? What would you think is the key pivotal points, do you think, on that journey that maybe were the starting points, and maybe the things that made the big shifts? What is that for you?
Well, looking back on my life now, from my age now of wisdom in the crone age, I look back and I see this tapestry that's run through the whole of my life, and the archetypes that spoke so strongly to me. And one of the scapegoat is a scapegoat with me. Looking back through my life, I thought it was a mess. I thought it was not connected. I thought there was something wrong with me. I couldn't be like anybody else, no matter how much I tried. I seemed to just get myself into these places where I accepted blame for things, or lots of things like that, where other people had, and I'm saying it in quotation marks, an easier life, so much an easier life. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And it was such a painful existence, such a lonely existence, um, that I become a very inward looking. And actually, looking back now, it was the start of that mystical kind of experience, because I walked with the Great Spirit through the whole of my life. There was that belonging that I felt. And no matter where I went through the same circumstances over and over again. And it comes that point in your life where, it's before we have the knowledge that we have now as the wounded healer, that you start to
Yeah.
think, there's a pattern going on here. Okay, it's not, I'm being given the same thing to look at from a different perspective. So going through that life and understanding that it's the beginning, it's like breadcrumbs. To me, spirit gives those breadcrumbs for you to follow.
Yeah.
Sometimes they come and they give you this big bang. Like when I
Yeah.
saw spirit for the first time, it was like, oh my God, I didn't realize I could do that. Okay, it's like, who am I? And then all of a sudden you can't, because they give you the whole of the picture. And then it's like as if all of a sudden, then you have to put the knowledge. It's like the warrior. You have to train that skill. You have to train yourself. And then, and then you get those moments in the normal life. And then these just extraordinary mystical experiences that that there is more than this material life, that there is the invisible world that connects with the soul. And as you start looking at that, and it helps that grow, that seed within you, it's like you can take yourself out of that very small perspective, and you start to see it with more of a bird's eye view, and you see that everything that happened in your life was a blessing. Every time that loneliness happened, or I got bullied at school or nobody liked me or anything like that, I was able to move through that, become more connected, and actually become more authentic. Because now, as I've got to this age, it doesn't matter whether I belong or not, because I belong to spirit. And what happens is, when you find that, then you find that people belong to you, because there's not that emptiness inside, that you're longing for it, but that you've become whole in that area, and you're full of abundance. And so that attracts those people that have that ability to be able to connect. So when I look back at that life and I see those circumstances, I am so happy to have gone through that, because it's given me so many skills in life. But the perspective is, we need to be able to move out of thinking it's about us, or we've done something wrong, or the victim archetype, and realize that God really does have our back. And I know that you've had experiences like this, Eileen, as well, with your health. So I would imagine that you understand some of the things that I'm saying. So how did it come about for you?
Well, for me, I think it was, more a kind of little dip in your toe, almost like lots of challenges, like what you're talking, the breadcrumbs, but maybe wanting to not really kind of go there in some ways. It's like not kind of, I think I was similar to you, because I know that you've said this before, was that you were brought up Catholic. I was brought up Catholic as well. So I was definitely very highly empathic and sensitive, and could be aware of things, but I would think more of an intuitive and a physical level. But kind of misunderstood. I thought kind of everybody got it, but I couldn't understand why they weren't getting it, if that what makes sense. So it took me a while to realize that what I experienced was not what everybody else was experiencing in the world. But I had that level of sensitivity where everybody kept saying I was too sensitive, and I was, I was a very child that was very anxious, very fearful child. but could sense things to quite a degree, and then had a lot of weird and wonderful things happened health-wise, very bizarre things in some cases. And the key point was when I was 19 and I was mercury poisoned, my life kind of literally within about 24 hours just completely, it to me kind of crumbled on one level, because I was a typical 19-year-old who was a wee bit um very about how I looked, and I had all these dreams, and I was still very sensitive, but I put up a facade, and the facade was crumbled literally within a couple of days. And and it's interesting when we talk about the COVID thing, because the COVID thing, see all the symptoms that many people had that would appear to be quite severe. That was after I had very severe, what would be like a viral type, but very strange. And I would go paralyzed, but nobody would listen to me because I was young. The doctor knew I had some serious virus and did come in to see me, but I started getting this kind of non-believing, people not believing what I was saying. And I would just, my journey on the healer's journey was from that point seeking a more holistic solution, because I faced a lot of discrimination from doctors, and it would go round a whole load of things. But I was very stuck in my victim archetype, and I had to find the power. So, and I was trying to find my power. But what I would find was I would keep meeting medical professionals who wouldn't listen, to the degree then that it came into my 20s. I discovered that I actually had a home that was threatened eye loss. So that challenge made me, I had to come out of that victim archetype, and nobody else was going to do it for me. And now I was never an aggressive person. I was never an assertive person. So it was a long-term challenge. But the wounded healer, it opened up that aspect of that extreme pain of not being listened to, being misunderstood, and also being discriminated against in many cases, because I would eventually get a diagnosis at that point as I was having later on as ME. And I spent a large part of my 20s being housebound and bedbound and having lots of strange things. But it took me through that loneliness, what you talk, that's the loneliness of not no one really understanding what you're going through, but having to go inward, having and recognizing also a level that the physical wasn't that important. Because when you have been stripped of your physical health and you can't do, like at times I couldn't, my body wouldn't move. So I was forced, spirit, like what you talk about, is forced me into circumstances. But no matter what happened, I still wasn't learning. I wasn't taking my sovereign power. And to me, I always think it's soul empowerment. It's a disconnection at a soul level. So, it's spirit and God trying to teach you to get back to this connection to spirit and trust yourself, not trust other people. And from an archetypal perspective, I think it took me a long time to find more. I think there was a bit of the champ or the hero coming in, but I have to be honest, I still had the victim archetype going on. So, and it's that because you don't think you're enough. You don't think you're whole. And I know that is Caroline's, and I know that your experience, your spiritual, I had a near-death experience as well, but that wasn't till later on in my life, after being in the healing journey for a while. And I think that from an archetypal perspective, we talk about the hero's journey, you go through all the different things, but it's an in and out thing, and it's a back and forward aspect that we can move through. Some aspects of my journey, I found a lot of strength and courage in my family, who always, like, I would always be classed, even though I was the eldest, as the, too soft and all that. I became the one that they found with incredible courage and strength and tenacity, right? But in other areas of my life, I still was that soft, empathic, where many healers are, compassionate healer, where would maybe be still a bit of a doormat, if that makes sense. So I think there's all the layers. what's your thoughts on that, Caroline, in relation to these kind of,
Okay.
these issues? Because I think
We
they're common issues.
Yeah, 100%. And you brought up so many. My mind's going jumping all over the place as you're speaking. Um, One of the things that's so incredibly important is that sense of reality. Going right back to the beginning of your story, is that we can all have so many senses of reality all in the same space. So when
Mhm.
you go into somewhere like allopathic medicine, they will have been trained and they will be coming mostly from that male perspective, that logical, what makes sense. They have no knowing of the female aspect, the invisible part. So especially if you are an empath or sensitive, and you're destined to become that wounded healer. It's like the two worlds are so separate. And to me, the shadow, and this is the shadow of the male, it's not
Yeah.
is that it will try to dominate the sacred female. That's the shadow of it. So it will try to put that
Mhm.
perspective on to that female, that
Oh,
sacred
yeah.
female. But part of that journey is for that sacred female to also understand that she has that sacred male within her, and she has that power to not take in that reality, because it's a kind of a gaslighting, and it doesn't just happen in the medical field, it happens everywhere. So when you're empathic, there will be some kind of experiences to bring you back into that place where you can heal either that female aspect or that male aspect within you. So as you're talking about it now, that journey has brought you into that male aspect, but the loving aspect who looks after the female, who's empowered and wants to look after others as well, and keeps that female aspect kind of safe. And she is the one that, brings all that healing to all these people around the world. And that's, to me, is what the system doesn't want. It doesn't want you integrated. It wants you either in the male side where you're logical, or you're hysterical down the other end in that female.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So you can see that journey, and it's a very painful journey because you think you're on your own. But actually, as you work through it and you start to become more of that whole, and I'm talking being able to see it from a bird's point of view, you realize that it's a journey from all humanity. And that's the part of the wounded healer's responsibility, to heal themselves so they're not stuck in that perspective, so they can see it from the whole, to show other people, if they can hear, if they're ready to hear. So, it's amazing that you got to this space, because it's not easy when we're gaslit like that at all, Eileen, and it can leave that residue. So, I have the utmost respect for you and for all people, and it was interesting as well. And you talked about ME. See, I did have fibromyalgia from it as well. So there's this kind of energy that comes from, I can't quite put my finger on what, but it's part of the journey, it seems to be.
Yes.
But you can move through it. But it's not
Yeah.
always easy to do this work when you have something that affects your energy like that. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people, a lot of healers and empaths have these type of challenges.
Mm,
I mean, I would later on find out I had actual lines for a child, but one of the interesting things that I find is how many healers and light workers, and as you said, they end up attracting these type of vibrational or energetic things that actually sap the life force out of them. Or, and interesting when you say this about the medical system, the male kind of the structure where the control element, they want to have this power over you, or is see you as the victim. And one of the things that I recognized at some level very young, which now I can appreciate, I must have had a level of awareness that I didn't even realize I had, was I'm looking at these medical professionals and thinking, this is really distorted. And I remember one incident, and I was given a radioactive stuff to check my eye, and they were slapping my face to keep my eye open. And there was being putting this radioactive material in, and I ended up swelling. This nurse saying to me, as if it was normal and it was okay. Um, but it's okay again. I mean, I'm only 4'9.5", and I've all, quite small. And she said, there's men that are like 3 times the size of you who get really ill with this, and it's okay. And I'm thinking, this is okay.
Mm.
And I realized right away at that point. I mean, I think I was about 21 at the time, maybe, or 20. I think I was 20, and I thought, this is so distorted. And I'm looking about and think, how can, yous are also wounded healers because yous want to help people. You've, and in many ways, are going along the wounded healer's journey. And yous think it's okay to give people these kind of really highly dangerous, and I ended up having it was a bad reaction, and that had another impact on my health to this thing. And I think one of the things that a lot of healers, are going to this, the light, what we think is light work and things, forget that doctors and nurses in many ways they want to help, but they get stuck in the system. And the wounded healer's journey is part of everybody's journey because we all have the wounded healers within us. And it's part of, obviously, some of us, it's more our purpose. But there's the aspect of that where our own wounding is, and our own pain and our own suffering is where we can have compassion for other people. But it doesn't stop there. And I don't know what your opinion on this, Caroline, but one of the things that I think, I met some amazing, some compassionate healers, and so inspiring with some horrendous stories. And there's so much to that, but there's also, I think, sometimes it can be naivety and think that just because they've healed something or they've worked through something, then that's the work's done, and it becomes what we call, maybe, in my area, they talk about the love and light brigade. They call them light workers who forget about the shadow and don't see. So, what's your thoughts about that?
Okay. So that's really interesting, Eileen, because that was one of the things that I found was the most jarring when I woke up. When it happened so suddenly and my whole reality was turned upside down, I looked to seek help outside because it had been so dramatic with me. And I had and I went to a spiritualist church, as an answer because I didn't know where to go. And, great respect. There was some of the old-fashioned healers there, really very ethical, and you don't find them anymore. Those really, like battleships of healers in that old-fashioned way. You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, and they know about spirit. They've trained. They took a long time. They didn't rush out to help people. It was a journey, and what I found as I went out into the world, I found everybody wanted to fix me. Okay, and you would have different opinions from everybody. I so needed help because I didn't know where I was, but everybody actually projected onto me. So there was none of those old-fashioned kind of healers that had really done the work. And I ended up getting so sick I couldn't get out of bed because I really thought this was my life. I felt very separate from the world. I couldn't find anybody who had that wisdom because when they spoke, I could feel, like you said with the doctor, there was a resonance there of you're not speaking for spirit. You're not.
Yeah.
You've just learned it from a book. You're not doing it from the healed, wounded healer, who's walked that path and has learnt discernment about what is light and what is dark. Because you have to look at the dark to be a really powerful healer. You have to have the ability to look at that dark aspects and hold your own. Okay, it's like Buddha. Buddha became enlightened under the Bodhi tree when he allowed Maya to come with all that was dark, and it just moved through him. Okay, so that is the aspect of being able to be a really enlightened wounded healer. So we must carry on. You never arrive. This healer's got all the answers. And the more that I learn, on this journey, the more I realized I know nothing compared to the intelligence of the divine. You know, all I can do is keep taking that shadow away, keep observing the ego and when he wants to go in and fix people or be right, and allow that divine force, get myself out of the way and let that divine force move through me. So I wish I had found healers like that at the beginning. I'm sure they were out there. Okay, but it was my journey not to find them. I mean, maybe my kind of purpose was to know how it feels to be on the receiving end so that I could bring, when I came to that point myself, a different way of doing it, so that it became much more about integration. So that's the kind of journey that I looked at. And yeah, and it does, it gives you a sense of loneliness. But I don't feel that anymore. So how about you? How was your healing journey with healers?
So I would say, interesting, I would say my first few experiences were actually the opposite. I actually was lucky. I met the first couple were actually really older and wiser. It was the kind of middle of my journey. So the first person that introduced me to Reiki was a natural healer. So that was first of all, right? It was someone who already had a healing gift and who only trained to for insurance wise. And this person was it was a hard bar to meet. That's all I was going to say. It was someone who had phenomenal results. Like a lot of people had cancers, and this person would heal people with things that most doctors wouldn't. And people would come all over the UK and even abroad to this person. So I was very blessed that that was one of the first people that introduced me. So he showed me a potential, but he obviously knew there was other things going on with me. Then I think he sensed that my journey wasn't going to be the simple, straightforward, getting that healing. He kind of sensed that. But he took me under his wing. And at that time, he wasn't teaching people. He brought someone else over from America. But he would train me like his apprentice but I wasn't, my health wasn't great, but he was very good. He took me under my wing. So I learned a lot from him. But one of the interesting things about him, and I was so glad, was he did not hold on to me and say that he was there to fix me. He encouraged me and his partner at the time to seek other, and they kind of told me that my role was definitely, they knew I was going to be a healer. Right. Now, I couldn't see that at that point. I was actually wanted to go back. Had been studying music. I was heartbroken. I wanted to be a singer. And it was a long story. And I tried so hard to keep going back to singing, and it was not going to happen. And they could see something I couldn't see. But I would say what happened, it was after that I started going down paths, and what you saying, there was actually gaslighting from healers and therapists, and I have to be honest, and I know this, some people are going to find this really harsh, but it's reality. It's my reality that was more traumatic. Some of what happened with the healers was far more traumatic and disturbing than with some of the things that had happened to me in the healing, the doctors, and my own suffering from the challenges I was dealing with. And I have to be honest, I could write a full book about some of the things that were said to me, done to me, were so mind blowing. And I love the holistic and spiritual sector, but I have to be honest, sometimes I do think there's a bit of wounding with me, the tainted aspect of the reality of what you've talked about, Caroline. I didn't go out, and I did do voluntary stuff, and people would ask me to give them healing, but I didn't start to be a professional healer till 10 years after, and I studied lots of things. I think at some level I recognised never wanted to be a healer or therapist that just was trying to make a career out of the thing they had just learned. And I didn't want to damage people the way that I felt damaged by healers who didn't really know what they were talking about at times. And also what you said, they wanted to fix you. I felt like people's social experiment. That's what I felt like at times. And what was more really disturbing about some of it, the amount I had, no really, I was really sick, so I had very low income. I was handing, I don't know how much money with people who hadn't a clue what they were doing and promised me the world and never. And, and obviously we can't go looking for healing from, I do share about things, but there was also some basic things that these people were supposed to help me with. And they were doing some really dangerous things. So I think um, one of the things I was lucky, but I did in that journey, I had studied counselling and things like that. And I'd done the psychology background and a bit of psychotherapy. And that one thing, no matter even if you don't like some of these, because there's some of them are kind of not always connected to spiritual, they do have good principles in relation to not creating codependency and trying to make you more aware of having good awareness. Now, I would say I was quite aware, but I have the rescue traits in me. So, and they're very much about do no harm. One of the things that I noticed about a lot of healing modalities was that it's so short and sweet. There is no time to really teach people things that they really need to know. And that people, so other than not them doing their personal shadow work and personal doing the inner work, there was also a lot of basic common sense things that was so out the window. So my reality made me want to be a better healer and therapist. Maybe too cautious, maybe at times, because I was just never wanted to feel that. But it also was the greatest gifts came from that. Because it made me go down so many different avenues, work with so many different people, and look at things from a wider perspective. But I'll tell you what else it helped me. And that's how one of the areas in my work was being a spiritual business coach. Noticing that most of these people that were doing that, the reason they were doing it, they were actually couldn't see their own gifts. They were often doing things in their healing journey that was not aligned with where their true gifts were. So they were maybe putting themselves out as healers, but they're not really a healer. They were maybe teacher or a coach. Or they were saying they were a physical healer, or maybe not. They were maybe better at mental and emotional healing. So it gave me a wider perspective of the industry. And from an archetypal perspective, recognizing that we are and having to be recognized, we're all the wounded healer in its light form, and we can help and be very compassionate, but it can also be the shadow form. What would you say was the pivotal point when you started to shift? Because obviously you have said similar, where you realized these people wanted to fix you.
Okay. Well, it's really good. I've got a bit of the rebel archetype in me. I'm really placid until you try to push me where I don't want to go against my free will, and then I won't do it. Okay, I'm really drag my feet.
Yeah.
But I remember training. I went to the Arthur Findlay College to try. People. I went to the spiritualist church, and every time a medium would come to me and say, "Oh, you're a medium," I'm like, "I don't think I am." But they would say, "Yes, you are." And then they had said it so often that I thought I would go and find out for myself. So I went to the college, and it was a very profound experience. I found it amazing. But what I did see there was there seemed to be a split. There was those that were born to serve in this way. It was a natural gift that they were born with, and they might have been, like myself or you, that didn't want to look at it because, like we're Catholics or something. But there was another section, and this is without no judgment, just observing it now, as there always is in the world. There were people there that were training who wanted to do it for commercial reasons. So there was no wanting to be of service, and they wanted to do it fast. They wanted to make money out of it. So there was no ethical kind of framework. They didn't care, and they didn't care what they would bring through or what kind of evidence. So it's very, very shallow, where I actually took 2 years to decide if I even wanted to do it. And this is no bigging myself up. This is when you come from an ethical place of whether I even wanted to do it. How about if I got a big head and everybody thought I was great, and then I just thought I was the best thing since sliced bread? I didn't want to be like that. I didn't trust myself. If people, because I was in such a wounded place, if people started telling me that I was great, I might just believe it. Do you understand what I mean? Rather than it coming from inside, that I believe in myself, that comes from that journey, rather than that narcissistic supply that somebody's you know, putting you up on a pedestal. I didn't want that. And
Yep.
also, if you become good at your craft, you also have to deal with people that want to take that away from you because they want to be in that commercial way and they can feel that the spirit is working through you. And sometimes it's like the crab in the buckets, they want to tear you down. So I also thought about that as well. But I couldn't get away from this wanting to serve. And yes, I was scared to see some of this stuff. I didn't want to see this stuff, but that's part of this journey. Sometimes the best people, they don't want that gift that's coming for them. But when you make peace with it and you realize, and there's none of that kind of resistance to it, and you open up fully and you let the divine work through, then that's when those beautiful gifts and they come, and that was the pivotal moment. Then I didn't become what I feared. I didn't get a big head. I actually became more grounded because I became more myself and more authentic, and the hole that was inside of me and that loneliness just went away because I was serving my purpose, or one of my purposes, you know. And I still get it wrong sometimes. I do too much or I help too much and I burn myself out. But there's that point, I never go to that place, you know, of just being of service and not realizing I've also got a physical body. And that's where I feel when we have ME and fibromyalgia, we've burnt ourselves so much by giving that
Yeah.
that part is coming back. So, you know, there's so many gifts in so many things if you can look for that, because it is about radical responsibility in that quantum field. What have I put out there? What is coming back for me? What do I need to understand about this situation? Because I've brought it to me. But it's not a curse, it's a blessing. Even the people that are not the greatest, what are they teaching about that I need to look? And when we stop struggling with all that energy of pushing it away, and I don't want to look at the dark, or I don't want to look at the dark at myself, and I don't want to see the dark in others, and I just want to be all running around with unicorns, please excuse me for saying that. You know, you do yourself a disservice. You cut yourself in half. Quantum field, that there is personal responsibility. That it's not just the light side, but the darker shadows also have such richness in. That's where the gifts are. The gifts, you know. So what would you say about the gifts that came for you in this? What's the strongest gifts that came for you? That was a shadow.
think I think the shit was the well, I suppose it depends on how you look at it. I think there was obviously I was very strong in my victim archetype, but I think it was not being able to harness my sensitive gifts and my empathic gifts. And I remember it was actually, it's interesting what you saying about you being told you're a medium, because quite a few people have said that, and I don't really want to go down that avenue. They've said to me I could be a transfiguralist, medium, because I was so empathic and so easily manipulated by energy, right? But I remember a healer said to me, and it was a medium, said to me, Eileen, you're an unruly empath. And when she said that word, I thought, oh, right, that, just her giving me that information taught me, got me to go down a route. And, it's a big long story. I won't go into that now, but how the level of sensitivity, I had, after I had a near-death experience and I had sepsis, the level of sensitivity was so through the roof. It was so disabling. I could experience so many things that were so mind-blowing, but also painful, that I needed real help with, it was like I didn't know where to go. And the biggest out of that shadow was that me, and also the near-death experience, was me learning that I had to put myself first, and that my role as an empath in this role was to stand in my own power first and foremost, in light, not just to be of service. You had to hold your power. And I think for me, that was the lesson in it. But from the trait perspective, also recognizing I was a nurturer. I actually did not see that in myself.
Hmm.
Everybody else could see it. And it wasn't till I did an actual archetypal branding interest, even though I'd studied archetypes, for some reason I wasn't seeing what was right in front of me. And another friend of mine was doing, and was going, oh my God, Eileen, you've never met him. To like it that you're so in your mother archetype, even though you're not a mother, a physical mother. But I'm not, what? I didn't want to be that archetype. So it's interesting. You said something about the people that have certain gifts don't really kind as if you don't want them. And I noticed this in my work. Many people want to be something and they try to make themselves a coach or they try and make themselves something. But I can see it by the way that they work, that it's not in their energy field. They're trying to be something when actually what they already are is already sitting there. It maybe needs to bloom more. And many people want to be really psychic, want to be mediums, but can they take, do they want the life lessons and the pain and all the other challenges that come with that? No. Do they want the sacrifices that can come with the gift?
100%,
And I
yeah.
think this is the biggest lesson for people. Lots of people want things but are not willing to master the skill. Or one of the things that Caroline May says, which I do agree, was people nowadays have reached this spiritual, they want to reach this like a spiritual guru type thing, and they want this attachment, they have attachment to it. But so they see themselves as a light worker, someone doing certain gift, but it's to come with a certain price packet, a certain type of lifestyle, and they miss the point of what the soul's journey and what purpose truly is about.
And I think that's such a valid point, because this is one of the things that has driven me. I'm not a person actually that comes onto podcasts or onto YouTube or anything like that, but I felt drawn and you were put on my pathway. But one of the things that I have concerns about as we're going through, as I would call it, the Kali Yuga, the change of times, I would say that there is an uprising of those that are holding a narcissistic kind of the spiritual narcissistic. Now, you don't have to be a narcissist, but you can be on that spectrum. It's like what I was saying when I went to the college. They were, I would say, spiritual narcissists who wanted to use that power to bring it out into the world. And this is where you're seeing lots of those kind of cult energies coming up now. People are giving their power away, waiting for the guru to tell them in these times, because they're frightened to look at this stuff. But there is nobody coming to save you. These gurus have no more knowledge than you do. Okay. And when you give that power away without discernment, you, unless that guru had done a massive amount of work on themselves, they will not be able to help but abuse that power, because they haven't looked at their own shadow. So we have to look beyond the words and beyond the marketing and beyond the brands to what is actually underneath, and learning that discernment. And you do have the answers. Both you and I found our answers, even in all that suffering, even in all that gaslighting. And it made us really strong so that we can do this now. And that's the journey of the wounded healer. Yes, you want to go into the caring arts. Yes, you've had that massive wound that wants to help, but you must continue to strip away that wound. And maybe it will never be healed, but it becomes less and less, and that wisdom and that gold comes to be able to. But do you want to become a cult leader? I bet you don't. I definitely don't.
Definitely not.
Because I want to be able to give people the tools to do it for themselves. It's got nothing to do with me. Yeah, that's
the biggest. I think that's one of the biggest lessons, or the first lessons of the wounded healer, is learning that it's not. I mean, when people, I know we use the term healer for certain reasons, but we are not the healer. We're the person that is supporting or empowering and holding the space. And some healers lose that, and some coaches, and they think it's all about them. Or as you say, the narcissistic traits can come in, which and one of the things that I would say is, what's one of the things when you see the gaslighting, and they don't have the awareness to see that there is a form of the narcissistic coming in, and also this self really bringing themselves up to such a degree, and it's not coming from the soul. And none of us are perfect. I've not got it perfect, and I make mistakes, and I say things that are wrong at times. And I certainly do not expect anyone ever to agree with everything that I'm saying or whatever, but it is about giving them the tools, as you said, Caroline. And we are here, and definitely it's the biggest lesson for people on the planet at the moment, that it's about them getting back to themselves. So, Caroline, I'd love you to share a little bit about your offerings that you've got soon, and tell, our audience where they can find more about what you're doing, share a little bit about that.
Okay. Okay, so like I said before, you might have got by the context that I am a medium, so I do mediumship readings. I also go into the Akashic, so if you want to know more about the soul, and also I have some stuff where whatever comes up in that, if you want to release it, that which you brought over into this life, I'm also able to do that. I'm also running a conference, a consciousness conference with many speakers from around the world. That's coming up. I'm also doing a course. I'm running a course at the moment for empaths and for people wanting to develop their intuitive skills, but that's nearly finished, but I'm going to run it again. But I've got a great course coming up on the 25th of June, which is about those that want to serve, and looking at the archetypes, looking at the shadow, so that as you remove that which is there, what is left is that diamond, that nugget. You are the seer. You are the person that this energy comes through. So it's not about learning it and going to college. It's about removing that which is not there and really learning to understand yourself. So basically, they're the kind of things I've got running at the moment. Lots of different things, but I keep it short and sweet.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. Thank you so much. So, thank you. And we're going to share quite a lot of different things, so watch this space, everyone. We're going to be talking about a multitude of the shadow, the archetypes, and some other topics with Caroline on this first video series. And if you would like to learn more about my work, I also offer soul empowerment, coaching, healing at eileenburns.co.uk, and also on my YouTube channel, this new YouTube channel, which is Eileen Burns Coach. And I'll share more about Caroline's details in the links below. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and week. Bye-bye for now.